Hello everyone, welcome back to our Accounting 210. In this video, we continue with the chapter 4. Last time we had the departmental overhead rate, right? So we said chapter 3, we learned the plant-wide rate. The feature is there is only one rate, one predetermined rate, and we use that rate to allocate our manufacturing overhead for all the jobs. But then we found out that that's not accurate enough because there are two reasons. Make sure it doesn't mean that departmental overhead rate is always better than plant-wide overhead rate. There are two reasons. There are two situations we should consider using the departmental overhead rate. The first condition is because each department, they have a different amount and type of manufacturing overhead cost. But the condition is you have different products, and then each product, they use the department to a different extent. Okay, the first product may use more amount for that department, and then second product may use less amount for that department. So only if you have these two conditions, you should think about using the departmental overhead rate instead of the plant-wide rate. Which means if you just have one, very similar products, and then all the departments, they are very similar. If that's the case, then you can just use the plant-wide rate. It doesn't mean, hey, you have to always use the departmental rate. We said I didn't go too much detail for the calculation. You can go through the textbook by yourself, but general idea is it's very similar logic. The only difference is for each department, you get a unique rate by using that department overhead total amount divided by that department, the cost driver. So you get one rate for the machining department, you get one rate for the assembling department. And then you use your actual cost driver to time the different rate for each different department. Okay, so now in this video, we will say, hey, even use the department rate is not accurate enough. We want to use the most accurate here is based on each activity. Okay, so the keyword here is our activity-based cost. It's not the plant-wide, it's not the departmental, it's used for each activity, and we still allocate the manufacturing overhead. Okay, now let's look at the general idea. It's more accurate, and then it can reduce the cost distortion to the minimum. It focuses on activity, as we said, it focuses on activity. We still focus on manufacturing overhead allocation. It's same logic instead of focusing on the plant, instead of focusing on department, now we focus on the activity. Okay, this picture, I personally like it a lot because if you haven't worked in a manufacturing plant, hard to visualize, hey, how many activities there are. So let's look at how many activities actually are occurring in the plant. One activity is machine setup, right? You have to set up the machine so you can run it. And then you use the machine to handle the material handling. You also have the fabricating parts, you call the material. And then you have the supervising assembling, so someone to supervise all the assembling line workers. You also have someone to do the inspection, and then finally you have to pack your product. So we have different activities, right? We not just have different departments, we also have different activities. Then we still, use the same logic, but we focus on activity. So we said, hey, for this activity, it should have one specific rate. For this activity, we should have one specific rate. For this activity, we have this rate. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 6 activities. So we will have 6 different rates. So for each one, we have the rate for this activity. We have the rate for this activity. I'll just use R. We have a rate for this activity, rate for this activity, and then rate for each activity. And then now we use this rate to time the actual amount related with this activity to allocate our manufacturing overhead. So let's say I just make up a number, okay? I make up a number. Let's say for product A, we just say there is a job for product A. We found out this rate is still based on direct labor, okay? Or for machine hour, I just say for machine hour, we found out this rate is $1 for 1 machine hour, okay? For $1 for 1 machine hour, $2 for second activity, $3 for third, $4, $5, $6 for each activity. We got this rate. And then we found out for job A, it actually used 2 machine hours in the first for machine setting up. It used 3 hours to handle the material. It used 5 hours to cut the material. Then it used 1 hour for supervising, right? It used 2 hours to inspect. It used 1 hour to pack. Okay, so now you get each activity, the rate, you also get the actual cost driver. Now, so for our job A, the manufacturing overhead, the total allocation will be 1 times these 2 related with our first activity, plus 2 times 3 related with our second activity, plus 3 times 5 for our third activity, plus 4 times 1 for fourth activity, plus 5 times 2 for our fifth activity, and plus 6 times 1 for our packing activity. So you can find out you have 6 different rates, and then you will have these 6 different parts. Okay, I hope that kind of makes sense for you. In chapter 3, we just learned just 1 rate, right? You have 1 rate times the actual amount of the cost driver. When we did the departmental, we had 2 rate, right? So we basically had 2 rate, and then you time each rate, you time the cost driver. But when you do the activity-based, you have a different rate based on each activity, So I think the textbook also showed you step by step. So you have this activity, you got the manufacturing overhead, and then you allocate your manufacturing overhead for each activity. You have a different rate, right? So you have a different rate. So from here, you can find out for machine setup, the rate is $10. For the handling, the rate is 50 cents. The rate for fabricating is 24. The rate for supervising is 3. The rate for inspecting is 5. The rate for packing is a quarter. So you have a different rate for each different activity. And then at the end, you use the different rate to time the actual amount of the cost driver, right? So that's what we did. So you have this one, you use the rate times the cost driver, you totally get our 109 for your first job. You use the rate to time the different cost driver, you got 212 for your second job, Okay, so that's basically the idea for ABC costing. That's basically the idea for basic ABC costing. And this slide shows you the comparison of your 3 different methods. Remember, we just use different methods to allocate our manufacturing overhead, right? We said for plant-wide, for this job, for that job, no matter which job, we allocate 160 for each one. We said that's too general, not accurate enough. For department, we have the rate for each department. We got 140, 200. So kind of a more accurate, it reduces the cost distortion. And for activity-based, finally, we get a more accurate allocation. It's 109 for the first job and 212 for the second job. Okay, so I stop here because we talk about the 3 methods. For plant-wide, this is from chapter 3. Departmental is the first part of chapter 4. And activity is what we covered in this part of chapter 4. So we still have a small piece part left for the next video, and then I will review the My Accounting Lab, those multiple choice with you also in a separate video. So I see you next time. Thank you.